Save the Semantics, episode 309. It is April 19th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Saturday afternoon / evening. A lovely April evening here. Nice and cool. We did have some hot streaks earlier this month, but it feels like it's kind of gotten to a point where it's more reasonable, I would say. Although we are sort of heading into more warmer months into May and stuff like that. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, it's NBA playoff weekend has begun. Today has just been it's been a good day for all that. Just all day basketball. I'm taking a little break to right now. The Wolves and Lakers are currently playing, but I think I'll try to catch maybe the second half of it. Well, I'll see sort of. I'll kind of gauge how that goes. But yeah, the first three games of today, kind of going in varying degrees. So we started off with the Bucks and the Pacers, which was a blowout by Indiana. Not really too much to talk about there, other than the fact that it was kind of a carry attempt by Giannis. Not surprising with Dame out. Obviously, Dame coming back will absolutely change the dynamics of the series, but for now, it feels like it's gonna be pretty difficult. I think this is kind of what my expectation has been, and the fact that I think the most striking thing that stood out to me was the fact that nobody was capitalizing on any of Giannis's passes. Like, nobody was just making anything. And that was just kind of the picture, man. Like, whoever was going to be the secondary scorers, if they even have any, nobody did anything at all. And also, you do have to credit Indiana's defense. They're not known to be a defensive, like a strong defensive team, but they were really playing really kind of lockdown. You could argue lockdown defense on Milwaukee on a lot of instances. I think it's probably a lot easier to do so when you're just solely focusing on, doubling Giannis when he gets into the post and just really closing out on whatever shooters Milwaukee has, which is frankly not a ton. So it was probably easier to game plan on their end, but regardless of that, they still really held it down. There was a stretch towards the end of the fourth where they kind of let go of the rope a bit. Milwaukee kind of came back and cut it down to 12, but that's still enough of a buffer lead to where you don't feel super uncomfortable. Nobody I just, there was no sense of momentum from Milwaukee's end, right? You were just not anticipating them hitting they did hit 3 threes in a row to get it down to 12, but outside of that, it's just I just don't know how much you can really trust this team to really kind of bring that energy going into the end of the game, you know what I mean? So I never felt there was a sense of threat in that run. I don't think Indiana really felt it all that much either, so they were just kind of, keeping steady with what they had, and it just sort of worked out, and they managed to close out, and it kind of got the lead back up to 20 or so, and that was kind of the game. But yeah, not too much there, other than the fact that Giannis was trying his very best, and nobody else could do anything else. So that was that's really the whole story, really. I do think that it is going to be, it is just game one. I think this is sort of the expected result of game one, at least for this series, where where it's like, this, the home team is going to get the kind of the strong blowout victory, but it doesn't really, I don't know. I think I don't have a ton of faith in the Bucks to be able to get this done. Like, I still anticipate that this is going to be like Pacers. I don't even remember what my prediction was. I think Pacers in 6 or 7, I think is what I said. I'll say Pacers in, I probably said Pacers in 7. I don't remember. But yeah, I think it still will be a longer series just because I think there are going to be games where Giannis does manage to pull through. And I think even if they go down 2-0, I kind of expect that they'll at least pull off like game 3, and then I'll kind of bring them back into the mix. So I just don't anticipate it. I don't know. This is something where you can, if you are the Bucks, maybe you can kind of just write off, because shots kind of weren't falling in your favor. But again, if this is a consistent issue where there are no secondary scorers on this team, yeah, they're probably going to get cooked. They're probably cooked, and it might be, that might be it. But I do anticipate that. I think, and especially if Dame comes back, if he does come back, in whichever the home games, in this series, I think that's going to give them a boost. So, it still will. I think this still will be a longer series, but. I do think the Pacers will eventually pull it off. This game was the next game was excellent with the Clippers and the Nuggets. I mean, just the level of like shot making, like every single possession, there was something going on. And there was just like, you had like Nicholas Batum hitting these like crazy threes. James Harden was obviously hitting some really tough shots at the end there. Russell Westbrook was causing just mayhem and on both ends, right? So it was a fun game. I would say so far that was probably the game of the day. But yeah, ultimately, it just kind of came down to the Clippers just towards like overtime, and they did have, I think, a little bit of a lead, but they kind of let that go with just some bad turnovers in the fourth and in overtime too. Just they couldn't inbound the ball. That was kind of the thing that sealed the game, with Westbrook on Harden and causing the turnover off of Harden. Just some bad turnovers on their end. Like, they really had like a pretty good grasp on this game, but just obviously Jokic is kind of just him just continuing to do what he does, and then some of the other players like Westbrook, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, like those guys really stepping up in the later parts of the game. That really kind of sealed the deal. But yeah, I think it was the fact that it was interesting that Kawhi he was trying to kind of will his way into making shots at the end of the game there, which we kind of saw at in the Warriors game last weekend. It was him and Harden kind of taking turns, like doing, isolation plays and that kind of thing, but that didn't really work out for them. I don't know, maybe it was just kind of them forcing shots. I feel like if you are a team of that caliber, you could probably run some other plays, right? Pick and roll, all that stuff. But I think they were just kind of getting kind of sloppy with it. This game kind of could have gone either way, right? I mean, at regulation, they had a chance to take the lead. Well, Harden tied the game. But there were many chances for them to take the lead or hold on to the lead, which didn't happen. But yeah, really fun game. This feels like it's going to be quite the series. You know what I mean? Just like the Clippers. Excuse me, the Clippers just defensive prowess and defensive kind of makeup of that team versus like just Jokic and everybody else, I think is going to make up for a pretty fascinating series, right? I listen, I kind of had my reservations and my doubts, like I was just kind of like, I don't know. It feels like maybe just Jokic just going to power through with this, and then also just me not exactly trusting the Clippers to be able to maintain their health, right? But so far, Game 1 has delivered, so I'm excited to see kind of what the rest of the series looks like, and hopefully each preceding game or each succeeding game is going to have the same level of intensity and those kinds of things, right? But really fun for Game 1 going into overtime. All of the Westbrook shenanigans, like it had everything, man. It had everything. So a really fun game. The last game that I saw was the Knicks and the Pistons, which ended up just being a Knicks takeover at the end of the fourth. There, they went on a 21-0 run. They were like down by 8, I think. Was like 9-ish minutes to go, which is a long time. There's a lot. That's an eternity in an NBA game. But regardless of that, they went on this like crazy run, and Detroit just couldn't get any stops. They were being very sloppy with the basketball. Just really bad turnover after really bad turnover. Asar Thompson had some bad moments in this one. He really kind of showed his youth here, where he missed a dunk and had some really just ill-advised plays down the stretch. So it really was kind of the quintessential example of experience trumping over the youth and inexperience of the Pistons here. But it was a fun game for like I mean, it was fun to see the Knicks go on their run and just kind of look unstoppable, but also it was just the fact that the Pistons just could not lock in. Like they just completely fell apart. But the first 3 quarters were really fun, like with the Pistons kind of coming in there and almost potentially stealing Game 1. I think this could have really made things really exciting, but just the way that the Knicks sort of held on to this one, I think is a pretty, it feels like a pretty clear, I don't know, it's a pretty strong indication of where the balance is going to lie with this series. And it's going to very much favor the team with the better players and the more experience. I think that's just kind of like the most clear-cut example of that. Obviously, again, this just might be Game 1. The Pistons might bring it, but this was really kind of a really good chance for them to like get this game and really take this one. But I think, what this is? I still think that this is going to be like Knicks in 6. I do think that Detroit will be able to at least get maybe like a couple of games at home. But I do think that this feels kind of similar to the Thunder. This is kind of a strange example, but it feels kind of akin to that, of the Thunder and the Pelicans of last year. It's a little different because the Thunder are still an inexperienced team, but just the talent threshold between them and the Pelicans of last year, I think, is what sort of brought them. Because like the Pelicans, they were making it really close, I remember, in Game 1, which ended up being kind of a sweep for Oklahoma City. I don't think that's going to be the case for this one, because I do think that the Pistons have better surrounding players and better vet presence around like Cade and stuff versus kind of a depleted Pelicans team without Zion. But it's like the Game 1 kind of scare of this young team going into Madison Square Garden and giving kind of a bit of a giving a bit of a shock there at the kind of the 3 quarters in, you know what I mean? Really keeping it close, having a lead going into the 4th quarter. But yeah, it's just kind of the unfortunate factor was just the Knicks just kind of took it to another level. the nerves, I think, got to the Pistons, and just a lot of the unforced errors and just very careless like defensive plays really led to just this lead completely ballooning, or their lead evaporating, and then the Knicks lead just kind of ballooning to where it got to. So I think it is going to still be an exciting series, but this really is kind of the epitome of what a first round matchup looks like between a team that has a lot of, a team that has experience, and then one that just doesn't. So we'll see how that goes, right? I do think that this will still be a fun series, but this does give me a little bit of, I am sort of like, I am a little worried for the Pistons that this might not be as long of a series than anticipated, just because there is like no answer. They didn't have an answer for Karl Anthony Towns, right? I mean, they were really trying to like, be physical with him, but he was just running through them. They had Tobias Harris for a while. That just didn't work. Jalen Duren just doesn't have the ability to kind of stay in front of Cat. Isaiah Stewart was doing okay, but even then, Cat was just kind of overpowering him, just being a bigger body. So I think that's just going to be this is probably going to be kind of a bigger series for Cat and just kind of taking over, you know what I mean? Because the Pistons just don't have an answer for him. And he played awesome this game. He really played well. He played well on both sides of the ball. He had some really like impressive defensive possessions where he was blocking like Asar Thompson. He had some like steals that really, I mean, sure, you could argue that it was like more just, careless basketball in the Pistons end, but he was the one that kind of capitalized on those and got credited for those like steals, which really, kind of was a big factor in them getting those fast break points. So he looked really impressive in this one. So if he's able to kind of bring that throughout this series, I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be in a good position. Brunson had a bit of a scare with his ankle, but he came back in the fourth and just completely cooked. Like he looked just kind of unstoppable. So I think the tandem of those two players and OG's defense on Cade, I think is really that was kind of really telling. You know what I mean? So we'll see if Cade is able to kind of come back and really level up, if you want to call it that, and or just rather adjust going into game two. But it feels like the Knicks just after this barrage of points, they got kind of the juice right now. You know what I mean? Even with Brunson kind of hobbling a bit there, they just got the juice, man. They just kind of have just the momentum and the energy and all that stuff, and that really showed in this one. So right now the Wolves and Lakers are playing. I'll see if I catch some of that again, and I'll update on that either tomorrow or on Monday. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'll just kind of give all of my thoughts on this weekend's games, and then just kind of combine those and post those, because there's a lot to get into, man. There's a lot to get into. It's a good start to the playoffs though. I'm really, we got a couple of fun games, one dud, but and then we'll see what this Wolves Lakers game looks like. Tomorrow I did look at tomorrow's schedule. I would say the only game that really is much to note is probably going to be the Rockets and Warriors, unfortunately. Like, I just don't really see the other three matchups amounting to too much, because you got the 1-8 matchups. Yeah, I just don't really know if that's going to really be anything. Maybe, like, best case, I don't know, anything is possible, obviously, but, it's like, oh, maybe the 10th seeded Heat could storm in and really just be the zombie Heat again somehow. But outside of that, yeah, you got the Magic, Celtics, and the Grizzlies, Thunder. I don't know about those ones, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, maybe you have Jaw going off for 40 or something, but yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, outside of that, you got the Warriors game, which I've talked about, and I'll obviously be talking about that. But yeah, maybe, who knows? Maybe they those other games actually turn into something interesting. But yeah, it's unfortunate that it's like all of the just because of how the play-in is structured and everything, the higher seeds are going to get more of a rest, and you also kind of need to have at least a little space in between to give like the 9 and 10, or whoever the eighth seed is, to kind of be, at least give them like a day, you know what I mean? Like the eighth seed is just, they've already played 2 games in the play-in, and then now they got to go to an opponent's home to play there. So it's just like that's a tough position to be in, you know what I mean? So we'll see how that goes. Again, anything is possible, but I'll talk about if anything interesting happens with those games, then I'll obviously get into the Warriors game. So yeah, but good start to the playoffs so far. All right, recording this on April 21st, 2025. It's a Monday. I'm going to do probably a quick kind of weekend recap of this past weekend, the remaining part of this past weekend's game ones. I talked a little bit on Saturday. Was it Saturday? About the first few games that happened. Afterwards, you had the Wolves-Lakers, which turned out to be a blowout in favor of the Wolves, which was pretty surprising. I did not watch a lot of that game because I was busy doing some other stuff, but I caught like the very tail end of that game. Basically, what the game was already kind of over, so I guess I missed out on some of the action. But yeah, I mean, I still, I don't know. There's still a part of me that is kind of doubting Minnesota just because of all of their shenanigans, just the cold streaks that they can go on. I mean, seeing like, I don't remember. I did watch that. I watched the game where they blew that lead against Milwaukee. That was pretty, I don't know. That was pretty, it was kind of a damning thing to watch that, you know what I mean? And that's kind of sticking out in my mind. I get it. Playoff basketball is different. It might just have been a case where they kind of took the foot off the gas and everything in that game, and it is just one game in the regular season, but still it's still not a great look. So that still is kind of in the back of my mind. And then on top of that, what I mentioned previously is I just have some questions regarding their kind of late game execution stuff. Obviously in this game it didn't matter because it didn't go into crunch time. But I don't know. I do like this Minnesota team. Like, if the Warriors weren't in the playoffs, I feel like they would be like one of the teams in the West that I would be kind of rooting for because I like their pieces. I like Ant. I like Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels. Like, they have a good collection of players, you know what I mean? But it's just like a matter of like if they're gonna be able to click all together, because it's like on paper they have a really good team, like they do, you know what I mean? But it just hasn't seemed to have meshed perfectly well this year. And I get it, like this is kind of like the first year of adjustment after the Cat trade, and Randall is kind of, he's a bit of a controversial player in terms of just the lack of playoff success that he's had, and just some of his tendencies as a player to just like ISO and bully ball, and that not exactly being the most effective style in some cases. But it's just, it's game one. It seems like they looked good. And we'll see, man. We'll see. I like the team. I just, when it gets to a close game, it's like, who do you kind of go to? My worry is that if it is like a close game, I still have a lot of skepticism in regards to Ant's playmaking, especially down the stretch where he's just kind of jacking up, sort of on not exactly the best threes at that point, where it's like way early in the shot clock and those kinds of things, which kind of allows the opposing team to kind of get back into it, giving them more time to kind of get back into it. So I have my reservations about that, right? We'll see how that goes in game 2, but that's just kind of where my head's at. I believe they play tomorrow, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch that, but because I have some things later tomorrow. But I am interested in seeing what the Lakers do as like an adjustment, and if the Wolves are able to kind of keep that up moving forward. But yeah, kind of surprising. I expected that to be a lot closer of a game, but game 2 adjustments will probably be made, and that'll be interesting to just keep an eye out on. The remaining 4 games that happened, it was just kind of blowout after blowout and just a massive blowout by the Thunder over the Grizzlies. I had something to do on yesterday morning, so when I eventually kind of caught that game in the third quarter, when I looked at the score, I had to kind of rub my eyes, you know what I mean? just to make sure I was seeing correctly, that they were down like 55 points or something, like 56, I think was the most. Crazy, man. I mean, that's a pretty scary thing to see if you're any other team in the Western Conference. Obviously, in the case of like Memphis, you know what I mean? They had less rest and all of these things to factor, but still, man, 50 points, 51 points in a loss is pretty devastating, pretty embarrassing. I don't know, man. It's like that kind of, like, out of all of the series, like, that one kind of is spelled out for you what the result is going to be. Like, at most, I'm thinking like 5, maybe the Grizzlies squeak out 1 at home, but it's hard to see them really putting too much of a fight. You know what I mean? Like, especially with kind of their roster makeup. I don't know, man. Like, they just don't, like, they really need to have their best 3 players just really pop off, and you just didn't see that at all. And then the Thunder just have every position covered. Every single position is covered. Like, Ja, he could be guarded by like Lou Dort or Jalen Williams, even Shea. And then, Jaren Jackson Jr. he could be guarded by Chet or Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, that's just, I mean, it's just like how do you even approach that? You know what I mean? So it's kind of a nightmare scenario, honestly. I mean, that's going to be a nightmare scenario for most teams, you know what I mean? So I will just kind of hold my sort of reservations about, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really have any reservations, honestly. I think this is just going to be a pretty short series, all things considered. So, and that first game was a pretty clear indication of that. The other 2 games, Magic, Boston, I don't know. That was kind of an expected result. Cavs, Heat, also pretty expected. But let's get to my Warriors. They pulled it off, 95-85 against the Rockets. Very happy to see. It's really encouraging to see this game 1 win. Like, it's just kind of sets the table and sets the tone for this series. They were really getting after it on the defensive end. I was very surprised by the fact that we were able to kind of limit their bigs for the most part. Like there was like a sequence, I think, in the third quarter when they started to make a run, where they had like Steven Adams and Şengün as like the double big lineup, and that caused some issues. I'm not sure why they didn't really keep doing that in the fourth, but maybe Adams kind of ran out of gas. Maybe there was like I don't know, maybe Udoka felt like he was played off the court. I don't know, but I felt like that was the most effective lineup against us. But luckily they pulled it off. Steph had some Steph moments in this one, and then Jimmy came through as really just another strong performance as the secondary star. Like he is just kind of living up to that name. And it was exciting to see them kind of pull it off at the end there. It was a hard-fought win. The Warriors did give up a 20-point lead at a certain point, and this is just kind of, it's like clockwork, man. Like, it's just kind of what you expect at this point, you know what I mean? Like, 20-point leads are just essentially 10-point leads at this point. So I feel like I should. There's just no lead is kind of safe unless it's like a 50-point victory in the case of an OKC. But it's hard, right? It's hard. It's a game of runs, especially. Houston came out really strong in that first the first half of the first quarter, and then eventually they just couldn't score for the remaining part of the half. But just kind of with their big lineup, they were able to get back into this game. Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green both put up some stinkers in this one. I feel like Green will probably have some sort of like comeback, or bounce back game in some other part of this series, but it's not exactly encouraging to see your like top scorer, at least from like the regular season, put up 7 points. You know what I mean? He's had some really great scoring outbursts, but again, this is a thing that I mentioned, kind of dating back to last year when they went on their run and were trying to kind of catch up the Warriors in the play-in kind of standings, where you saw this like incredible scoring run by Green, but it just throughout the year he's just not consistent. You know what I mean? It's just not something. He's not reliable enough to be kind of that go-to scorer and everything, right? I mean, this is a talking point by everybody, but it's very clear. You know what I mean? It's like a very clear indication of that. They just don't have someone that they can kind of go to if they need a bucket. Van Vliet does have the experience and the playoff prowess and all that stuff, but he was just chucking up shots, man. Like every time he shot it, I'm like, that's good, man. That's actually good for us. he should keep doing that, because he can hit those shots, but I think there was just maybe this expectation because nobody else was scoring at a certain point in the fourth quarter that somebody needed to score. Just their half-court offense relies, it feels pretty heavily on just them getting to the glass and offensive boards and just continuing to just kind of pound against the glass and all that. So I don't know how well that's going to translate later down the line. I don't know what exactly the adjustment is going to be going into game 2. Are they going to just kind of continue to play that style and hope that shots start to fall in by their guards? I don't exactly know. But the Warriors get 2 days of rest next game. Game 2 is going to be on Wednesday, which is good for the Warriors. Much needed rest in between games for the old guys there. So that will benefit them. The Knicks and Pistons are playing right now, which has started off to be a pretty good game. So I'm going to try to catch that. I do want to watch a good chunk of that if I can. But yeah, it's we're in the thick of it. You know what I mean? It is sort of hard to wrap up all like 8 series, you know what I mean? But I want to try my best to, and I want to try to catch what I can. My hope is for all of the games that were kind of blowouts or whatever, that they, and especially for those like 1-8 matchups, make it a little interesting. You know what I mean? I get it. It's hard, especially if you're Orlando or if you're Memphis. And I mean, it's just tough, man. I mean, how do you bounce back from a 51-point loss? I don't know, man. I don't know. I think in Orlando's case, I watched like the first half. Orlando actually had a lead going into the first half, or going into the second half, but it's it was kind of expected where that was going to end up. I don't know. It's just sort of hard for me to see how they're gonna be able to pull it off unless it's gonna be like a low scoring game and the Celtics are just not hitting any threes. They need to kind of get lucky in that sense. But I do hope that they can make the series a little bit more competitive, at least make it a 5-game series. Don't get swept, man. Just try not to get swept. All of those teams, the Heat, the Magic, the Thunder, and the Bucks too, man. I hope that becomes a bit more of a series, because that was a pretty, ugly loss to the Pacers there, especially. Like, that was the most obvious result of what a Bucks loss would look like with this current makeup of the team. Just Giannis by himself and nobody else. So I don't know. I hope that'll be a little bit more interesting. I'd hate to see Giannis go out like this. Because people are ready, man. And listen, I've been kind of a proprietor of this, just considering as someone who would love to have Giannis on this on the Warriors. That's not going to happen, right? But it's just the conversation of, and it's after one game too. The conversation of trade talks with Giannis and all that, and it's just like it happens every single year at various times during the year. And it would be really unfortunate if this was the result of this postseason coming to kind of an early close for Giannis and the Bucks. But it just sort of, it feels like that way, right? Unfortunately. I just like, what else can the Bucks do? I think they're pretty hard capped with their current roster. Like, unless they make some drastic moves and trading Dame and I don't know, some of their other pieces, like, and trying to retool around Giannis in that way. Like, even then it's like, how is that gonna look any better? Like, who can you get from that would work any better than what the Bucks currently have? You know what I mean? So it's like, it feels like there's a kind of a clear ceiling on this roster right now. And I don't know. It's kind of sad. It's kind of disappointing, because you want to see Giannis at least be in more competitive games. This is the first series and over like the last couple of years that he's healthy, and it just turns out that it's just not. He's surrounded by not a very strong supporting cast. So I hope that, I don't know what the direction's going to be for the Bucks. I think this whole trade thing is going to continue to be a thing. I don't know if he is going to get traded or not. Their ceiling really is probably a second round exit, right? Because they would be playing Cleveland next if they somehow eke this one out against Indiana. But Indiana looks good. Indiana looks pretty good. And Tyrese Halliburton didn't have a good game, as I mentioned. So I don't know. They're playing tomorrow, I believe. But yeah, I hope that series will, because that was one of the ones that I've been looking forward to. I sort of touted it as a Giannis revenge series of sorts. But if he doesn't have the right tools to surround him, it's probably going to be kind of pretty short-lived little tour there. So yeah, but playoff basketball, it's here. We're in it, and excited to try to just kind of talk about just anything anything that really pops up and, piques my interest. So we got the Knicks and Pistons today, and then we got the Nuggets and Clippers later tonight. So depending on how these two games go, I'll talk about those tomorrow. And it's one of those things where I kind of want to stay on top of this thing, and try to post or at least try to record on the daily, because games are happening every day. So there's always going to be something happening there. So yeah, depending on, timing and everything, it's going to be, I'm back to frequent posting, which I'm looking forward to, because I'm excited to talk about, the matchups that interest me. So anyways, that's going to do it for the first game one roundup of all of the first, game ones from this past weekend. And, yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.